At a time of a global energy crisis, Canada provides the United States with reliable power, with critical minerals that help fuel American growth. 99% of U.S. natural gas imports, 85% of electricity imports, 60% of crude oil imports. That is mutual strength. Let's be absolutely clear. Canada Strong will help make America great again.
All right, the Prime Minister, of course, today he's in New York addressing industry leaders and financiers about the need for a renewed partnership between Canada and the U.S. Let's go to Andrew DiCapua. He's principal economist at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Marilla, good to be here.
So the relationship between Canada and the U.S. has been, we'll say, uncomfortable for the last year plus. The Prime Minister is calling for a new partnership. But what could that look like?
Well, I mean, if you took a look at the remarks or listened to the remarks, Marilla, I think the Prime Minister was trying to project confidence. There were a number of audiences that the Prime Minister was speaking to. New York is a global financial hub, right? And so I think the Prime Minister was speaking, to Americans, of course, being an American audience, to Canadians and to the world, trying to project confidence that Canada is on the right track, that we are seeing a lot of momentum in terms of major projects, being approved. We've seen record FDIs in the last quarter of last year. We're seeing some positive momentum, and so the Prime Minister is trying to project that confidence to global investors to say Canada is the place to invest. I think in terms of, with respect to the United States, he's also flipping the coin a little bit. We often say that when the United States succeeds, when the United States succeeds, Canada succeeds, right? But he sort of flipped the script on that and said, listen, when Canada succeeds, the United States succeeds. We have what you need, and so you have an interest in making sure that we are successful.
So the way he spoke of it today was that Canada reducing dependence on the U.S. will actually benefit Americans. What did you think of that argument, similar to what you were saying?
Yeah, well, if we use the investor analogy, right, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right? We naturally have a very intertwined relationship with the United States. The United States invests a lot in Canada. Canadians and Canadian companies invest a lot more into the United States. But it is in the best interest for the United States that we diversify, that we increase revenue sources to different parts of around the world, because that buffers the Canadian economy from any one shock, right? So just like a portfolio, you want to have different sectors, different companies. You can set different weights to different parts of the world. That is what the Prime Minister is trying to say. The rhetoric has been quite strong from the Prime Minister, right, in terms of the nature of the relationship has changed. But I think it's also just restating that, that the Canadian government and that Canada as a whole is taking is on a different path, is on a different mission. And one of those missions, of course, is to strengthen defense, is to meet our NATO targets. That sends a very strong signal to the world that we know that the world is a more dangerous place. We want to step up to that challenge. We also know that we need to become a more resilient economy. We have to attract investment to power our economy, to improve productivity, to grow living standards for Canadians. So we are taking measures to move that forward and make that happen. So these are all projections of confidence and of course, speaking to a very familiar crowd in New York.
The U.S., of course, moving forward on its review of the trade deal with Mexico, but with Canada not so much, dragging its feet, I would say. Do you take this as a sign of a more difficult negotiation to come?
Well, I think it depends on how you look at it. The United States has a number of grievances with Mexico in particular. And so whether you want to call it advanced discussions or not, there are a few more kinks to work out between the United States and Mexico than, let's say, the United States and Canada. And so, of course, the conversation has been ongoing and will potentially ramp up in the summer, of course, as we meet that milestone of July 1st. And so I think the Prime Minister used this speech as an opportunity just to remind the Americans, listen, we're here, we're engaged. And it's it's a good thing, because if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. And I don't think that we want to project to the American public, to the American business community, or the American officials that, we're out off trotting the world, trying, and turning our backs to the United States. We're showing up, we're on the ground, and we want to do business. And that's what I got from the speech, and I think that's the general message from the Prime Minister.
We know there are going to be many irritants when that negotiation or that review does get underway. How much of a problem do you think Canada's agreement with China will be for the U.S.?
Well, the U.S. and China are two global superpowers that are trying to battle it out, right? The competition around AI is only making that worse. We're seeing export controls. I mean, and a bunch of different things there. President Trump was in China recently and brought a bunch of American business leaders there. So they're trying to work through their differences there. I mean, we'll see what happens in terms of how that relationship evolves. But it does put Canada in a very tricky position when it comes to dealing with China, because, of course, the United States is going to want more cooperation. They're going to want more alignment on regulations when it comes to China, and they're going to want more alignment on tariffs when it comes to China. You saw that, of course, come up in the case of EVs, and of course, that is a sticking point for the United States, because they don't want Canada to, of course, embolden, China's access into Canada or in the U.S. market on that front. So it's a competitive world. And I think as we sort of become a global player and we face this increased competition, right, we're going to have to wake up to that reality, and we're going to have to face criticism and decide which way we want to go. And I think that's why this diversification strategy is important, because it means that, listen, we've got a lot of stakeholders at the table, and we've got to work with a lot of different countries that maybe won't agree on all the same things.
All right, Andrew, I do have to leave it there. Appreciate your time. Andrew's principal economist at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce.